Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners via Simartinga Radio 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, respective radio stations island-wide and online viewers. I'm Rolika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister of Justice, Anna Richardson, to address you. Minister Richardson, you have the floor.
Pleasant good morning, Honorable Prime Minister, my colleague ministers who are on their way, to the press, to you, Ms. Roach, the CoM team, of course, a special good morning to all senior citizens. Within the last couple of days, it has been quite a somber atmosphere for us. I want to be able to express my condolences to the Peterson family. That justice is no longer with us. I did speak to his mom yesterday, and I intend to see her today. And I have expressed my condolences to the family personally. But not short of us speaking about bullying, we were all witness to the swarm of videos that was shared with us yesterday with the activities of our youth. But I couldn't also help but notice individuals who were engaging negatively or violently with our youth who were in plain clothing. And that then signals that individuals who are not attending schools are making it their business to go to the school areas and assault the children. I have a real concern about that. I take note that when these situations come about, the first institution to be blamed is government. But I really believe that as a society, we have to be able to realize our role and responsibility as individuals. I was sharing with my colleagues yesterday that we focus a lot on the youth, but I don't think that we realize how much as adults it is happening. It is happening on various platforms, from the highest, the in-between, to the lowest. Every single individual is contributing to some level of bullying. And as a society, we have to take ownership of that. Right now, everybody is talking about how tragic the situation is and how sad it is. And literally in 24 hours, the children are fighting. The children are fighting. The children live in households. They have parents. They have teachers who have to deal with this. But I want to also commend the individuals that I saw in the video, the adults who were trying to separate the fight, who were trying to get this, but they couldn't do it on their own. It was a lot. And a parent messaged me and said, I can't wait until my child graduates out of this. And I know a lot of parents, I'm a parent, many of us are. We are holding our breath every day that our children have to go to school and have to be subjected to this. It has to stop. So as a community, we have to do it instead of pointing fingers as who is responsible for doing it. And as adults, we have to be honest how we're conducting ourselves, how we're blaming ourselves, all the different media platforms. Hear me out well. Platforms. I'm even speaking to Parliament in the way that we are speaking to each other. No one, absolutely nowhere is excluded from it, because we take every opportunity to try to tear someone down or highlight a negative aspect. And it's wrong. The children are watching as well. So we have to collectively find a way to address bullying as a society, not just focusing on our children. Children as well are dealing with a lot within their personal lives, and they project it onto each other as well. So let's figure it out together. Yes, CAPSM, as a department that's falling under me, is taking steps to be able to safeguard, to bring that safety and security, but it goes way beyond what CAPSM could do, way beyond. what the Ministry of Justice or I as Minister of Justice can do. I wanted to advise that we recognize that our website has a bit of a challenge, so we're busy working on that. We do apologize for the inconvenience caused. I know persons are trying to apply for different things via online. We expect it to be up within the next 24 to 48 hours. I pray that that is the case. I just returned along with my colleagues from Aruba and Curacao. We visited Suriname. We were hosted by our counterpart, our Minister of Justice in Suriname, Amoski. It was an exceptional trip. There was conferences where much discussion was held about cross-border crime, human trafficking and smuggling, and a whole list or array of other justice-related matters of how we, as a quadripartite, is going to work together to be able to address this, how we're going to support one another to strengthen the safety and security we provide to our respective territories. I'm going to be putting out a press release within short regarding that. We are busy also putting out a press release in connection with a stop that we made. So we went via Curacao, and while in Curacao, we made use of that to visit the ORV and the University of Curacao. We want to see if we can launch a pilot online opportunity for our members of staff, refresher courses, etc. So those are the updates that I have for now. I will not necessarily be available for questioning because I have another meeting, but I am taking questions via email and I will respond to those promptly. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Richardson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Silvera Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Good morning, colleague Minister Richardson. Good morning to the members of the media here present, as well as those following. Good morning to the staff, the support staff here of Department of Communications, and of course, hearty good morning to the people of St. Martin tuned in via the various social media. As we gather today, and has been said by my colleague, yes, we are, I would like to say more in reflective spirits, or I hope that we are. We're reminded that despite all the challenges we face, that St. Martin is and remains a blessed nation of people with hope, and that our collective efforts will continue to reinforce our position as one of strength, adaptability, resilience, and progress. I want to express my gratitude to the people of St. Martin who stick to it, whose fortitude serve as a driving force and an encouragement and inspiration to us all. Thank you for your unwavering support and your feedback even as it relates to what we are facing. We navigate the challenges that come our way, and for me, it is a constant test. It's a constant test of your own faith and your own positive thinking. Because what I have learned during my tenure here, and I must say because we came in a crisis, I had to learn it very quickly, is that the power lies within each and every one of us as to whether something will go well or whether it will go bad. Bad things can happen, but it is how we respond to these challenges and these triumphs is what defines our characters. And I believe the essence of St. Martin coming together is something that is really, when we try to put our finger on it, that is the strength of St. Martin. So, despite the heartbreaking circumstances of the past week, I'm hopeful. It is heartbreaking to learn of the loss of a child in any circumstance. But in this kind, I think it's a parent's worst nightmare. And the fact that you cannot undo it. You cannot undo it. And so there are lessons to be taken from this tragedy that I believe the entire community can learn from. And in speaking to the parents and in speaking to mental health professionals, I just have a few things I want to say. What we say is important. What we say is important. And sometimes I can remember the word people say, if you don't have something good to say, say nothing at all, because it can be even more detrimental. Some people, in reaching out to the families, unbelievably, are doing so from a position of trying to get melee. And that is unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. Empathy and compassion means putting yourself in the shoes of another. Putting yourself in the shoes of another. These types of, and the way we report on them also plays a role. Right now, schools, not just the school where this student or where this child attended, but all schools on St. Martin are now going to have to are being more vigilant, because you don't know what kind of a signal what has happened, as well as the reaction that is in the media or within anywhere, within the home, whatever, is having on our youth. What effect is it having on adults? A lot of us do not face our trauma head on, but somehow we expect our children via osmosis to figure out how to do that. So, as we have said, and I have posted what I had to say already on behalf of the government of St. Martin and myself, it will take the community coming together in unity to combat the negativity that is plaguing this country. These are all symptoms of a bigger problem, of how we think, what we do, and what we say. So I can remember being a teacher and asking children to be who you say you are. And some of them saying, but I see so-and-so doing so-and-so. And sometimes it is us as teachers, other adults in their lives. And I remember when I was a child, when you would say these to your parents, you say, do what I say and not what I do. But that is impossible. That is impossible. So let us turn our hearts and minds to positive solutions to the many challenges we face. As a government, we've had, as Minister said, a very in-depth discussion on all the different aspects that are already in place and the need for us to ensure that that is properly communicated to the general public. So the crisis hotline at Mental Health Foundation, the different schools with their student support services, so whether it's social workers or psychologists, and having a good way for students to interact, but also hearing from our students, hearing from our youth. What solutions do you see to this problem? If we do not involve them in the planning and preparations, we can have great policies, we can have all that, but the children will still not reach out. One thing a counselor said to me right here in government, because we're also looking at what can the business community do, what can we do to bring preventative measures to the adults. And that I think we can do also here in government. We are planning some sessions, and I encourage the business community to do the same. Allow during your working hours for preventative measures to be shared with the adults/parents within your working space. Ways to cope, and the first thing the young lady who is a counselor said to me is actively listen. To actively listen. As adults, as parents, we tend to talk to our children, but we don't realize that when they are trying to express themselves, that we are not listening. We are complaining about children on the tablets, on the phones, etc., but what do they see? It is that same behavior. So again, we have to model the behavior we want our children to use, and we must make spaces for them to speak freely. We must be able to apologize when we have reacted negatively, so that they can see that it's okay to apologize. Let's find ways to encourage people to share their emotions without shame, especially our boys. I commend the foundation, what's it called? Men's Mental Health Matters, or there's been a lot of attention on this lately, and yet we see this happening. So clearly there are still persons who are not reaching out, who are not sharing, or who feel unheard. So let us find ways to diminish the impact of negative words and actions, whether from adults or from children, on our youth and on ourselves. Let us realize that we are more than what other people think of us. We must believe in who we are internally. So if you know anyone who is struggling with thoughts of suicide, of giving up, with thoughts of, well, there are many other symptoms of depression, please reach out to them or reach out to professionals who can help them. We must, as a community, realize that we cannot do it alone. We have a strong faith as well, which helps in times like these. So I pray for strength, I pray for courage, and best of all, I pray for hope for a brighter future where the lessons learned from the negative challenges that we face will make us stronger and therefore help us to preserve lives moving forward. I want to make mention of one more thing. Minister talked about fights, but I have also been noticing a lot of reckless behavior on the streets, on the cycles. And another video was circulating last evening of another accident. It's very graphic. That is somebody's child, or that is somebody's father, or that is somebody's sister or brother. We have to remember, it could be you, it could be someone for you. Do you want this in this type of an atmosphere? And then sometimes they say, when you see the reality of it, maybe you will stop. I don't know which way is best, but I would like to respect the privacy of people in terms of what we post and what we share. Also, please be more careful on our streets. Value your own life as well as those that may be negatively impacted by accidents. Accidents can happen, but some of the behavior I am seeing, it's almost like we're looking for an accident. So I'm asking all of those on the scooters, on the bikes, others are road users. Let us respect the road. Let us respect life and try to share and find what is causing this recklessness also in this arena. There is some other news within government that I'd like to share. As some may know already, last week, the State Secretary shared a briefing note with the Parliament, her Parliament, and I've shared also with our Parliament the way forward as we are now with the refinancing of the COVID loans. We are moving forward. We have this month to finalize the process, and they should be finalized by on our end in terms of how we're moving forward by the 1st of October. So I'm looking forward to, once the Minister of Finance returns, that we sit down with the committee to decide on the way forward, bring it forth to Parliament, to our Council of Ministers, and move on. The Financial Concern Report was also approved yesterday in the Council of Ministers. That's the quarterly report for 2023 up to the second half. It shows positive growth numbers in revenue, as well as, which was much more than what the approved assumed budget for 2023 was. This is due to higher income from mostly taxes and lower expenditures as it relates to cost of goods. But of course, we expect that as the year continues, that more expenditures will be made. But it is still good news that the income revenues are higher than we had projected. I also received a very positive and inspiring presentation last week, which will be shared with the Council of Ministers tomorrow, from a focus group that was established within the core civil service, volunteers. A call of action was put out, and some, I believe, 29 first signed up, but in the end, there were 17 civil servants that came forward, looked at the recommendations that came out of the satisfaction survey that we executed, and the recommendations coming out of that, and they gave their input on it. What was great is for them to have put forward recommendations for their peers, for the middle management, for secretary generals, SGs, as well as for ministers and other political office holders. 4 levels of recommendations from the core. And I think that is the key that we need to really drive change. We can come with recommendations from above and say this is what needs to be done, but unless we involve the people whom it touches, you will never get a full execution, because the main thing that they indicated was needed was a mindset change. A mindset change. And I believe that is something we need across the board in the country. We cannot continue to say we want to do things, but we are not willing to be a part of that change. So it is a matter of, I said in the beginning, introspection, looking inside. What can I do? What can I do? What can government do? Yes. What can civil society do? Yes. What can the churches do? What can businesses do? But at the end of it, we are all only in control of our individual selves. What can I do is a question I would like to ask the population of St. Martin so that we can be a part of the change that's needed. Other good news is that we do finally have agreed upon dates for the 2024 elections and all the relevant dates. The government of St. Martin, in close collaboration with the Central Voting Bureau, is pleased to announce that the dates for the upcoming elections, after a very diligent and comprehensive process and receiving the necessary feedback from the Central Voting Bureau, we are able to present these dates today. This ensures all of that process, ensures that the chosen dates will not impede any other coinciding processes, because if we go in the laws, we will see a whole lot of how many days before, how many days after, and what needs to be done. So without further delay, they are as follows. The deadline for registration of new political parties will be October 11th, 2023. I repeat, the deadline for the registration of new political parties is October 11th, 2023. Nomination day or postulation day, which is a day in which the candidates' lists are presented, is November 22nd, 2023. November 22nd, 2023. Election day, thus, will be on January 11th, 2024. January 11th, 2024, with the installation of Parliament taking place on February 10th, 2024. So election day, January 11th, 2024, that's the official date, and the installation of Parliament, so the date that Parliament will be sworn in is, or to sit, is February 10th, 2024. It is from that date that all the other dates had to be calculated. And initially we thought that because it fell on a Saturday, that we would be able to move that to the 12th, but there is no legal basis to do so. And that's why we had to take the time to go back and adjust the initial projections. Our commitment to transparency, accountability, and a fair electoral process has guided every step of this endeavor, and we understand the significance of providing ample time for political parties to do their necessary to inform the public of their platforms, etc., so that informed decision-making can take place within the citizens of St. Martin, and that the transition of power, should that arise, takes place peacefully and smoothly. I'd like to remind that the nominations for Royal Decorations 2024 are still being sought, and you are reminded that anyone who has been of remarkable and valuable service to St. Martin for a duration of at least 15 years, either through commendable professional accomplishment, dedicated volunteer work, or a combination of both, with a strong focus on personal merit and contributions of exceptional significance to the community, and is presently engaged in community initiatives. Persons who know of these, please reach out to RODAC, that is RODAC, at stmartingov.org for further details. And the deadline for submissions is tomorrow, August 31st, 2023. So get in contact with them today for information so that you still have time to present your submissions. Also, there's a deadline looming in the form of submissions for prospective consultants, consultancies, agencies, and bidders. We are actively, as government, seeking your expression of interest, EOI, for the project titled Early Warning, Establishing an Early Warning System in St. Martin. Our goal is to furnish technical expertise for the creation of a precise, multi-hazard early warning system framework for St. Martin, and we invite all interested parties to outline their experience, qualifications, and proficiencies. Of course, you can learn more about the terms of reference, access either at the government building in person or via email at Secretariat EOC, so that is Secretariat EOC at stmartingov.org. The deadline is September 11, 2023. Information session was held on the 28th of August. and proposals must be submitted by the deadline date. Your involvement will lead towards the plan, which will then lead towards the procurement of said early warning system. Continue to monitor the weather as we are still in the midst of our hurricane season, and be prepared, be vigilant. Visit our Facebook and government website for information on how to do so, and follow the information as provided by meteosxm.com, which is our meteorological service, which is thankfully being served by our working radar. So while you may not be able to see it live as yet, the radar is giving up-to-date information to our meteorologists who are able to then update. Thank you very much. At this time, I will be open for questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. Thank you for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session, and Bibi Haj Shah of SMN News, you have the floor.
Thank you, Erlika. Good morning, colleague. Good morning, ministers. My first question, Prime Minister, you basically addressed it with the refinancing offered by the Dutch government in order to basically rescue Enya. In addition to the additional COVID loans that we have, Prime Minister, how do you see St. Martin getting out of this debt cycle?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, the conditions that have been put forward for the loans, let me reiterate again, there is correspondence to corroborate what I'm saying, so I'm not just talking off the cuff. St. Martin pushed from the beginning to move along the lines of what had been presented back when we signed the 2020 loans. It was never written, but it was a discussion that was had. It was also presented by the then State Secretary to the Second Chamber that should St. Martin or the other countries be working along positively with the reforms, that would then bring us into recognition for decrease in amount of loans, etc., what is to be repaid, etc. However, the sitting government does not have a mandate to carry out that discussion that had been made for us, a promise made. And at the end of the day, we were given the framework under which the financing would be extended. The reality of it is that the loans become due on 10 of October 2010. Imagine that, on Constitution Day. 2023. Sorry. They were extended by 1 year and 1 year after 2020. So 2021 and 2022, they were extended by a year for these discussions to happen. And it's unfortunate that they were not, as MP George Pontiflet always says, that they were not just wiped off. Because for us, as St. Martin, they were given in the midst of a hurricane. Of the pandemic. It was COVID pandemic relief. It is same as hurricane relief. We also have loans from them as well. So as a small island developing state, the IMF has also stated that we should not be continuously burdened with debt if we're expected to develop. We put forth our investment plans. We did all our due diligence, and I want to thank all of the hardworking committee members in the finance ministry, as well as others who have contributed to the reports that we submitted as part of the discussions and negotiations with our Dutch Kingdom partners. And St. Martin did its due diligence, and as a result, now we're being presented with an option to only pay interest for X amount of years, which will leave some funds free for investment. And after a certain amount of time, we will then have to pay a lump sum. So that still is, a large burden for the countries. And we're hoping that in the time during then, or when we sign off on that, and the time that we have, that we will be able to continue to renegotiate as we work towards the achievement of the reforms, the needed reforms that we have identified, that we have embedded in our national vision, and we are committed to execute. So investment is needed for that, and so we are looking forward to the best conditions to be able to do that. We do have some room within our debt ceiling to be able to do capital expenditures and and we are continuously looking for other means of funding, which is available to the SIDS. The Dutch government has also pledged other development aid, And so we will make use of every opportunity. But even if funds are all over the place, if we don't do our due diligence and prepare the projects and prepare the different policies and legislation, the money cannot be used. So we have to do our part, express our needs clearly, and find the funding that is available out there.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Bibi, for the question. I would now like to invite Judy Fitzpatrick of the Daily Herald. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Prime Minister, Minister of Justice, colleagues. Prime Minister, in relation to the announcement you just made on the election date, can you indicate when the voter registry will be closed so that we can be sure that it will indeed be 15 seats that the electorate will be voting for? And as of right now, how many eligible voters do we have? And the Minister of Education is not here, Prime Minister, so I will pose this question to you. Hurricane Idalia made landfall in Tallahassee, and we have quite a number of students in Tallahassee. Can you indicate what mechanisms are in place to assist our students if that becomes necessary following this very powerful Category 3 storm? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, and good morning to you as well. In terms of, there are many other dates that still have to be published. I know that, the public was clamoring, as well as the media, for the election dates, and so we, in this presentation, only put forth those dates, but in the coming days and weeks, we will put out more information as to all the other dates in different forms so that it reaches a wide audience. So you can look forward to that. And as per my last update, we are still at the 15 seats based on the amount of people. I don't remember the amount off the top of my head, but we did not achieve the number, and it is not expected that that will happen based on the trends. So we remain at 15 seats for now, and if that changes, then we will be updating the general public in a transparent manner. As it relates to the hurricane that is currently hitting the southern part of the United States, I understand it's been downgraded now to a Cat 2. There are mechanisms for communication in place. We do have the Tallahassee Foundation. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there is a foundation that has existed for many years, the St. Martin Tallahassee Foundation, that has contact with our students, and they look out for our students and report back to the Study Financing Division, and we're updated. They, of course, government provides medical insurance for them, and if the need arises for them to evacuate, then we assist in whichever way necessary. So I don't have the direct contact, but I will have the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, via its division Study Financing, put out a statement on this to reassure parents, etc., as to what would be done or is being done.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Judy. We now move on to the second round. Bibi, you have the floor.
Thank you. As a follow-up to my colleague's question regarding the civil registry and when will this be closed, Prime Minister, it has come to my attention a lot of persons have been written out of the civil registry, and when they go up for example, persons showing up for an ID card, they are no longer in the registry, and they are asked to provide a host of documents so that they can be re-entered into the system. There are people that allege that they were even threatened that if they do not provide, for example, 6 years of tax returns, they will never get back into the system. Now, they didn't ask to be removed from the system. There one person who told me that they believe that there's some sort of election rigging, number rigging, because to keep the number down so that you don't pass the amount that is required to increase the amount of seats. There are people who are also complaining and receiving letters about losing their passport, their Dutch nationality, because they're now living in the US. These are all concerns raised by people, all of which are taking place since the cleanup of the civil registry. How do you respond to that? And I'll take the opportunity to ask you to give me a comment on the thoughts of the recently elected president of the Guyanese Association expressed concerns that he would like for the Prime Minister of St. Martin to invite the Honorable President and Dr. Irfan Ali to St. Martin for the celebration of 10-10-10, because of the current status of Guyana and the impact it might have on St. Martin. What's your opinion on that?
Quite some questions and comments there, Ms. Shaw. As it relates to civil registry, I have been weekly. I don't say it every day that I'm here, but it's usually a standard on my notes to remind the people of St. Martin that they are going through the process of updating the systems. This is a legal obligation. You must have a correct count of the citizens of St. Martin, and I have implored persons to ensure that your registrations are current, are up to date. In previous elections, we've had many, many, many returned ballots. I can't tell you, not ballots, voting cards. I cannot give you a number, but it is always very alarming because you need your voting card to vote. So in cleaning up the registry is to ensure that registered voters are able to receive the voting card so that they can register, so that they can vote in the district as per our registry. Then you would also have the proper numbers to determine the registration of persons, because it's not only the eligible voters, but your total population registered citizens determines the seats in Parliament. I've asked persons and citizens over and over again to ensure that they come in, that they do that. Not to wait until you get a notice or you go to do something and you find out you're deregistered. If you have moved, it is your responsibility by law to change your address in the civil registry. So this is your obligation as a citizen. The civil registry, after making numerous attempts to contact you, will only assume that you have left the country, and they have a right, based on law, to then deregister you. It doesn't mean you're no longer a belonger or a Dutch citizen. You then have to, if you have not left the island, you rectify it by showing that you've been here all along and give your correct proof of address. And if you have left the island, you re-register. It does not remove your rights. You just re-register. The person's register also impact the pension. So these things all have financial consequences. So let us please debunk that a government agency is doing anything to be less than transparent in preparation for elections. They didn't start this now. This is a process that has been ongoing over the years. But of course, now that we're getting closer to election, you want to make sure that the numbers are as accurate as possible prior to. So again, as it relates to that, civil registry is willing to work with you. You just have to show, according to law, what is necessary, and there's no need to get annoyed, etc. There's a legal obligation. We're functioning in a lawful society. As it relates to the passport, those are issued via the Dutch Kingdom. This is not a St. Martin law. So the legislation that is in place for the revoking of passports is not within St. Martin's power. I have cases popping up daily, as you say, where after where people come in to get a renewal, you ask for certain information or certain information is required, and then when they go back in, they determine that the manner in which the Dutch citizenship was granted did not follow the proper procedure. It does not mean now you are, let's say, without a nationality. You then have to go over the process, do over something. And if you don't agree with the process, there's the courts as well. I know in certain cases, the Ministry of Justice had to go through a process of expediting residence permits for people who prior to that had Dutch nationality. So I'll allow the minister to elaborate on the steps that her ministry has taken to assist persons who have found themselves in this quagmire. One of the reasons this happens also is because if a child is born of a non-national, it automatically gets the nationality of the mother. Acknowledgement now takes place in case the general population doesn't know, prior to birth, if fathers acknowledge children prior to birth, they automatically get the father's nationality. But if that is not done, then they have to go through a process of DNA and all kinds of things before that child can get the Dutch nationality. There is a process. So these are laws that are established, and it is clear that we need to do more also to ensure that the population is aware of what is done and that it's not ad hoc. No one is picking on you specific, but if things have been discovered to have been done erroneously in the past, there's a path that needs to be walked to fix it. So I'm hoping that everyone's challenge can be fixed and within short, so that no one loses the opportunity to exercise their rights. And I think a lot was said about my stint in Parliament the other day when we discussed elections and electoral reform. But one of the things that was discussed was the possibility, one of the reforms was whether, right now our constitution says Dutch citizens are allowed to vote, but the seats are based on the full citizenship, and there are people who don't need to change their passport, don't want to change their nationality, but have lived here for 30 years. So I think it's a valid thing that we look into. At what point can you, as a legal resident on St. Martin, being counted towards the amount of representatives there in Parliament, also get the opportunity to vote? So this is something that in my upcoming electoral reform discussions, we will be discussing, and I would gladly like to hear the public's take on that.
Minister Richardson?
Right. So indeed, as the Prime Minister indicated, there were some persons who did experience the matter of their Dutch nationality being revoked, and they did have to go through that process of applying for residency again. And in those peculiar situations, humanitarian was given and given retroactively to be able to fix where the error occurred. So whilst there are some persons who indeed are subjected to this experience, the support and steps to be able to rectify the situation is in place and is being executed. Thanks.
Prime Minister?
Yes, I forgot to respond to the invite. Or first of all, you mentioned that there's a new consul. I'm not sure.
No, the association, the Guyanese St. Martin Association, recently held an election. The new president of that association asked for this.
Okay, so we have, through the ministry, the Department of Foreign Relations, deals with our consuls, etc. I have recently met with, for instance, the Indian ambassador to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, who was traveling and resides in the Netherlands, and she was accompanied by the consul on St. Martin. So we have several consuls, so several countries have consuls on St. Martin. I mean, even being asked what is the process to have embassies and consulates, etc. So I will request the ministry via the Foreign Relations Department to put that information out there. And should any entity representing a national group have a request, that should come into PM Cabinet at stmartingov.org or via the Department of Foreign Relations.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. I would now like to invite Judy. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Just a quick clarification to Bibi's question. Would government be open, though, to inviting the President of Guyana, Dr. Ali, should this request come in? And my question, again, Minister Samuel is not here, and so I will pose this question to you. You are an educator. The date of the FB exams has been announced, and to the shock of educators, parents, and students, the exam is being held 6 weeks earlier than normal. That is quite a bit of time, Prime Minister. I know as an educator who was in the classroom that you are aware that it's already a challenge to finish the curriculum. To finish the curriculum within the 8 months that students already have, and to cut that by 6 weeks teachers are seeing it as an impossible task. So I would like to ask, and if you don't know, I would appreciate if I can receive the answers. What are the reasons for this major change? Why are we taking away time from our children? And will government consider, as educators and school boards want, to move the dates back in the interest of the education of our children? And Prime Minister, also, can you kindly give us an update on grid market? We see that a lot of progress is being made on the area of renewable energy in Aruba. They've recently signed an MOU for their hydrogen refinery. So can you give us an update on grid market? Thank you so much.
Thank you. As it relates to inviting presidents of any country, that is something, when you invite persons to your country, the cost is on you. So, to some extent, the cost to hosting them is on you. And I believe that we have been asked, how come, in fact, we didn't invite Curacao, Aruba, Statia, Saba, that belong within the Caribbean part of the kingdom at least. But of course, Curacao is also celebrating on that day, Constitution Day. So I will have to take this under consideration to see what the plans are, what is being done, and who are the projected invitees, and have that discussion within the Council of Ministers. As it relates to the change in the FBE exam, I'm definitely not privy to the whys. It is not something that comes up in the Council of Ministers discussion. I know I experienced this same phenomenon in the past while I was actually dealing with this. There's always a challenge of where it falls as it regards to carnival and what can be done and what level of concentration the children have once carnival hits. So I don't know if that's playing a role, and when the carnival, those things usually fall within weeks of each other. But the FBE exam, let me just be clear as an educator, is not a exam of the past year of the child's life. It is a buildup of what has been learned over time, and specifically, especially in the last 2 years. So a lot of what is done in the 5th grade as well, so group 7 as well as 8 form part of, and is part of the curriculum throughout. So it's a buildup of information. Unfortunately, we focus on the exam and lose track of actually ensuring that we go in depth in some of the content. I have experienced this because of the deadlines. And so yes, moving up the deadlines can put unnecessary and undue pressure on our students, on our teachers, and everyone concerned, parents as well. And so this question will be posed to the relevant departments that may have come up with these projections, which is the Exams Division, Inspectorate, and Department of Education would have contributed to this. And it's usually, and I say usually, in consultation with the relevant parties. So if that wasn't done, then that needs to, the minister will have to respond as to how he will be dealing with that, or how it will be dealt with moving forward. I know for a fact that in the time when I was at that helm, that the information would go out for the meetings to be held with school boards to have the discussions on scheduling, and the schedules are made for 2 to 3 years in advance. So again, according to me, that is still the process being used, and most recently, the union has mentioned that they would want to be involved in those sessions as well. So the minister did promise that that would take place, and I don't know if a meeting since that discussion with the unions has already happened to facilitate that all stakeholders are able to have their input in the scheduling of vacations, and as well as important dates such as exams. Some may be out of our hands, but the foundation-based exit exam is something within the purview of the government of St. Martin. So I will leave the answering to the relevant minister and ministry. I will pass it on, but I'm sure everyone is following that they have taken note and will respond in writing.
Prime Minister, there was one more question that Judy asked.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Prime Minister, I would just like to say, yes, but I would just like to say
We will let Prime Minister answer the great market. You did have 3 questions this round. Go ahead, Prime Minister.
So Grid Market is the company that prepared our roadmap. They have been having extensive discussions with various stakeholders on the island, but of course, the main stakeholder being NVGEBE has to be fully involved for us to move towards the execution of it. The next step in that plan is the site assessments of where the possible solar panels would go. The first phase of our transition to renewable energy entails solar panels, and the energy work group, which consists of the various departments within government and NVGEBE, are scheduled to meet in this week and moving forward so that they can forward the agenda, because the inclusion and the participation of NVGEBE is key. And we did receive in our last meeting with them commitment to move forward, as well as several documents in writing to be able to forward the agenda for St. Martin of moving towards renewable energy. As you know, we also signed a MOU in Aruba with the Dutch government to be able to access funding to be able to move forward, which is also being followed up on, but will require, of course, more information being I said it earlier, we have to ensure we're doing our due diligence. So that is what is needed now, meaning collaboration, Grid Market, government, and NVGEBE to move forward positively to do this. So every country is at a different stage, and I'm very happy for the process where they are at. We are currently still where we are.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Members of the media, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. You are encouraged to send any further questions to the Minister's Cabinet in writing. Honorable Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, members of the media and radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. For rebroadcast, tune into St. Martin Gov Radio via 107.9 FM, Tel TV Plus Channel 15, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, and YouTube channel Government of St. Martin. For video on demand, log on to the Government of St. Martin's YouTube channel. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Rolika Roach and wishing you a pleasant day further.